All right, everybody, welcome back. This is the Horn Takes podcast, your very rough around the edges Texas sports talk destination. Yeah, we like to cuss around here. We like to say things that not a lot of people want to hear. Some people don't want to hear. A lot of people won't say. We do that stuff on this show. That's why we're your very rough around the edges Texas sports talk destination. I'm your host, Sean Redfern. It's Tuesday, folks, but we've got no game to run an after action review on. Sadly, we talked yesterday about college football season, how long it takes to get here, how quickly it goes away. Most of us, a lot of us are living in sort of a purgatory of all that. Kind of an in-between place where it's still football season, but we're not playing. So we're sad. It's been a long road to now for Texas fans. We're going to talk about that today. It's interesting to try to find things to talk about. During the season, the show, during a game week, the show is very much just a blueprint over and over and over again. I wouldn't say we've been struggling to find things to talk about this week. There's always stuff to talk about, but it's just interesting the things you come up with to talk about. And today I decided to talk about just how long of a road it's been for Texas and how hard of a road it's been for Texas fans to get to where we are right now as a football program. And then we'll talk a little bit about how Sark did it, how Sark took over what he took over and built what he's built to this point. Again, regular season, regular game week. The format of the show is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 12 noon Central Time. We do Exaggeration Monday, where Drunk Sean just tells you all about his thoughts on the game from the weekend before. Then Drunk Sean gets sober on Tuesday, and we do the after action review. And that's where we really have rewatched the game, look at the statistics from the game, and we find out if Drunk Sean was wrong or right on Exaggeration Monday. Then Thursday's Deep Dive Thursday, where we look ahead to Saturday, the opponent we play that week. And then Friday, we do our prediction Friday. And that's usually 4 keys in a prediction for the Texas game. We do our Trace Ultra Games picks on Friday as well. You guys can check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. They did a no Longhorn fan under 1K deal on Twitter starting, I guess, Friday, maybe Thursday night. We added quite a few followers. I think we're up to like 500 now, but we would certainly like to get that to 1,000. We'd certainly like to get that to much more. So if you're listening, you use Twitter. Check us out at Horn Takes on Twitter. Our TikTok account is almost up to 5,000. We get a lot of interaction on TikTok. It's kind of fun to kind of argue back and forth with people on TikTok. We do some lives on TikTok occasionally. And then on YouTube, I don't know what, we're a little over 100. I would love to get to 1,000. And if everybody on my Twitter or TikTok page would just run over to the YouTube page, search for at Horn Takes, find us on YouTube and subscribe. That'd be awesome. I would appreciate that. You have no idea how much I would appreciate that. We might start giving away free shit if y'all did some stuff like that. Listen to the podcast. Man, if you guys just like to listen to podcasts, me and my wife, when we go on these long trips, we find a podcast to listen to. Right now, we're listening to the Atlanta Monster. And she loves the true crime stuff. So that's kind of why we listen to the true crime stuff. But I would encourage you guys to listen to me. You can find me at horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. It's been a long road to now. What's now? We're 12-1, baby. We're the Big 12 champions of 2023. Our final opportunity to win a Big 12 championship. They go out and do it. Kind of interesting because we also won the first Big 12 championship back in 1996 against the Nebraska team that I think we were a 21-point dog. That was a rough Nebraska team. That was kind of in the Nebraska glory days. Texas is 2023 college football playoff bound. I don't know how many Texas fans would have said, yeah, man, we're going to make the playoff this year if you'd have asked them back in August. I think maybe you ask them after the second week of the season, after a big win over perennial power Alabama in Tuscaloosa, a team that's led by the greatest college football coach of all time. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. I fully believe Nick Saban, he's not even arguably the best college football coach. He is absolutely the best college football coach of all time. Texas rolls into Tuscaloosa, wins that game by double digits. And I think if you asked a lot of Texas fans after that game if they could make the playoff or if they were playoff bound, some of them would say yes. I wasn't ready to say that yet. But if you'll recall, I had conversations with all kinds of people, and we talked about it on this show. I went on the Spurs Up show with Chris mid summer, I think. We talked about Texas's, playing Alabama this season, Texas going into the SEC, what our thoughts were on this team and how we thought this team might do this year. And I said if Texas can figure out a way to win that Bama game, they could be a team that could go undefeated, win the Big 12, wind up in the college football playoff. So I always knew the potential was there, but I don't know that I would have ever just declared it. Texas beat 7 of the Hateful 8 in the Big 12 Fuck You Tour this year. Only played 7, so they're a good 100% against the rest of the Big 12 that they played this year from the Hateful 8. The Hateful 8's been taking shots at Texas, beating Texas. Some of them really beating up on Texas for the last decade. So that felt good to be able to return the favor, let those guys know, especially after the whole summer of actually the last 2 years of just pissing and moaning about how Texas ruining this, Texas ruining that. It was really good to give those guys what they deserved as we headed out of the conference. We got scoreboard on them. They all realize, the last 10 years was a fluke. And sometimes you just shouldn't poke a sleeping bear or what is it? Let sleeping dogs lie. There's a lot of different sayings about what you don't do to people or things that are just better than you. And that's what the Hateful 8 just couldn't understand. I think now they understand. So by any reasonable measure, Texas has already had a really, really good season. Some might call it a great season. And some people might say Texas is back. I hate the whole Texas is back thing. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But I think if you're going to say Texas is back, and certainly some people in the media have said that very recently. I mean, Texas hasn't been any more back than they are right now in a long, long time. So let's talk a little bit about, we mentioned it's been a long, long road for Texas fans, and not just Texas fans, Texas administration, Texas football program, those players, the coaches that have been a part of all this. The one thing that's been constant, though, is the fans. And we've had to endure a lot to be where we're at today. And we'll just start talking about it. It's been 18 years since Texas won its last national championship, 2005. Vince Young, sort of the Mac Brown glory years. It's been 14 years since Texas won its last conference championship until a couple of Saturdays ago in Arlington. Obviously, in 2018, they played for the Big 12 championship, but they really just kind of backed into that one. West Virginia blew 2 games in a row, their last 2 games of the season. And that's what vaulted Texas into that second spot for the Big 12 championship game, a rematch against Oklahoma. Uh, that wasn't an ass kicking in that game, but I don't think the game was really that close. Oklahoma sort of controlled that game for most of it. I guess you would say Texas was competitive in that game. Either way, been a long time. Texas fans have had to endure 5 losing seasons since Texas's last Big 12 championship game. 4, 5, and 7 seasons, 3 straight under Charlie Strong. God, looking back on Charlie Strong's tenure at Texas, I knew it was bad. And I don't know if it's just like I'm old, so I forget shit, or if your body just blocks out traumatic things. Some people talk about that, how traumatic things have happened to them and they really can't recall much about it. I don't know if that's the case for me on this, but God almighty, that was terrible. That was just some epic trash. And that's where the meme of Mac Brown, "You miss me yet?" came from, was the Charlie Strong era at Texas. So we had the 4, 5, and 7 seasons. We've also had a 6 and 7 season where we lost the Texas Bowl. That's painful, folks. 5 losing seasons. It's one thing to just not get it done the way you want to get it done. It's one thing to win 9 games, 10 games, hell, even 8 games, and just not manage to get it done. Win your conference, play in a big New Year's 6 bowl, stuff like that. All the stuff that you look at and you go, this is how you define a successful program. It's one thing not to do those things. It's another thing to just be fucking terrible. And Texas was fucking terrible under Charlie Strong. Only one 10-win season in this time frame since the last Big 12 championship game, and that was 2018. So that's kind of the season I'm talking about, where you don't reach all your goals, but you can look back at it and go, that was a good season. We played in the conference championship game. We went to the Sugar Bowl. We won the Sugar Bowl against a really good Georgia team. That's a good season. And I think, regardless of what your expectations are, you can always look back at something like that and go, man, that was a good season. Texas had 2 losses to lowly Kansas. I believe Texas was the first Big 12 win for Kansas ever. And I may be wrong, but I feel like that's what I feel like at the time, that's where I was. The Kansas won their first Big 12 game ever. Surely that's not right. I don't know. We're gonna have to look that up. We will look that up, and we'll report back on it on Thursday's show. Either way, Kansas was fucking terrible. They wound up beating Texas twice somehow, and the one in Steve Sarkisian's initial year was really, really painful. We had a coach that kicked the ball off to start both halves of a game. That was my friend Adam Butcher's favorite coach, Chuck Strong. He had another guy that thought he was a genius. Just thought he was like just an absolute miracle of coaching genius. And he might have been, but he really lacked the maturity that's required of the head coach at a program like Texas. And I think I'm talking about Tom Herman. Tom Herman, to me, the one thing I remember about Tom Herman, well, a couple of things. He really weird answers in press conferences, like really sort of arrogant, condescending answers in press conferences. And then I remember the video shot of him at the Alamo Bowl against Missouri, I believe. where the Missouri quarterback kept like doing something where he was like putting something on like a coat or I don't know what it is. I'm not hip to all the little signs and shit that these kids do. Something like that. And something happened at some point in that game, and I don't even remember what it was. It was something good for Texas. And then you see Tom Herman like clearly mocking this kid and doing it in a manner that was just a really bad look, in my opinion, for the Texas Longhorns. It just you don't want your coach doing that kind of shit. So again, and that's just scratching the surface of the roughness. There are so many things. We could talk for like 3 hours probably on just how painful it was from the time Mac Brown left to this year to be a Texas fan. 3 times since Mac Brown left, Texas fans have been excited, and I mean really excited about the coaching hires. When you look at Charlie Strong, that guy was one of the best defensive coordinators in college football for many, many years before going on to be a head coach, and he was successful at Louisville as a head coach. Beat some good teams, did some good things. Comes to Texas and is just an absolute bust. We mentioned it. Record was 15-21. Just some of the most ridiculous things that you've ever seen a coach do. I mean, Charlie Strong would look like he didn't know what the fuck was going on the sideline. Like he literally had no idea what to do. You know how when you get overwhelmed and you just kind of freeze? You see this in the business world all the time where if you try to tackle too much of the problem, you just freeze and you do nothing. And that's what Charlie Strong looked like almost every single football game. He was the head coach for Texas. They would shoot to him on the sideline. And I think it became like a thing, like the producers were like, all right, the game has now reached the point where it's a complete and total fuck. Let's show Charlie Strong on the sideline. And he's just staring blankly off into space. Like he doesn't have any answer for what to do. He doesn't even like his brain is almost not working. Like he's just alive physically. That was Charlie Strong. That face was like the way you sum up that whole 3 years. And it's kind of interesting because Red McCombs spoke out against Charlie Strong. And for those of y'all who don't know who Red McCombs is, he's he's passed away since, but huge. I believe he's passed away since. I'm almost positive. Huge donor, a huge booster for Texas athletics. Like at one point, I don't know if it still is, part of the field was named after him. Something was named after him. Something large at Darrell K. Royal was named after Red McCombs. So this is a guy that's made a lot of money. He's owned professional sports teams. Just a businessman, but a huge booster, huge alumnus from Texas. Spoke out against Charlie Strong and was like, man, I think he's a great position coach, probably, maybe a coordinator, but he should not be the head coach at Texas. A lot of people gave him a lot of shit. A lot of people threw a lot of, racist accusations at him. He said what he said, and he was 100% right. I don't know if a lot of the people that went after his ass apologized to him after the fact, but they probably should have because he was 100% right. Charlie Strong, fucking disaster. Then comes along Tom Herman, and Tom Herman's a guy was an assistant or GA under Mac Brown. Worked his way up through the ranks. Was the offensive coordinator for Ohio State's last national championship team. He did it with a third string quarterback. That team offensively was really, really good. And that was Tom Herman. Tom Herman goes on to be the head coach at the University of Houston. And what he was known for at the University of Houston was winning big games, beating teams he shouldn't beat. They beat Florida State when they were ranked high. They beat OU one time in Norman, I believe, when they were really highly ranked. Beat Louisville one year when they were top. I think two of those teams were like top 3 when they played them, ranked 3 and above. And that's what he did. He did it with a roster of guys that, most of them not moving on to play NFL football. Most of them not your upper echelon of college football players. And so Tom Herman became a really hot name. And it kind of came down to LSU and Texas were both kind of fighting over Tom Herman. Of course, LSU ends up hiring Ed Orgeron, who goes on. They win a national championship in 2019. We get Tom Herman. And Tom Herman, what he did do was fix the recruiting classes, like how good the recruiting classes finished from a Stars perspective. He did bring in a lot of, really highly touted players. So he brought in some talent, didn't bring them in the right places. Tom Herman was very much all I need is skill guys type of dude. He loved him some skill guys. But he just wasn't a good fit for Texas. We talked about it. He was immature. He was really arrogant. He was condescending. He was not thoughtful in his process of building the culture at Texas. He was not thoughtful in his process for recruiting. And I say that. I mean, he was probably thoughtful. His thoughts were just fucking stupid. His way of doing things just isn't the right way to do things. And he did have that one good season in 2018. And honestly, I was kind of surprised when they fired him because, just a few weeks before that firing happened, Cristel Conte said, Tom Herman's my coach. Tom Herman is our head coach. And he said that they won a bowl game that year, like completely destroyed Colorado in the Alamo Bowl, I believe. So he said all that stuff. And I think that last season, 2019 or 2020, it was an okay season. I think they won 9 games. So when they hired Steve Sarkisian in January of 2021, I was definitely shocked. And I think most Texas fans were shocked. Point being, Cristel Conte was constantly behind the scenes trying to find a better fit. It just wasn't Tom Herman. So along comes Steve Sarkisian. He was the head coach for Washington. He was the head coach at USC. He was the offensive coordinator after those stints at Alabama. Then he jumped to the Atlanta Falcons to be the offensive coordinator. Then he comes back to Bama again, orchestrates 2 really, 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 really awesome offenses, a team that won the national championship. He's a guy that had some success as a head coach. Some, not much. A lot of success as an offensive coordinator, but he brought a lot of baggage with him. His best season at Washington was 8-4. His overall record at Washington, 32-29. He had a 9-4 year in year 1 at USC. And then he gets fired in year 2 after a 3-2 start. Just, a rough deal for him. They put him on a leave of absence. And that's when the world found out that, Steve Sarkisian had a really bad drinking problem. And I don't know a ton of detail. What I do think I know is that he basically showed up to team meetings one day just shit-faced. Players noticed it. Assistants noticed it, sent him home. And that's when he got put on a leave of absence, and that's when he was ultimately fired. And man, that's a rough deal, man. That's a thing that most people don't get to come back from, especially, just think about it. I don't know how many of our listeners are alcoholics, but I'm sure a lot of you have drank before, and I'm sure you understand what it's like to be sad and what it's like to be depressed. So put yourself in somebody's shoes that's obviously got something going on, that they've let alcohol take that much control over their life. There's got to be some sad stuff going on. Like you're not mentally in a good spot if you do that, right? And that's why people turn to alcohol, is because they're trying to escape, their reality, which their reality is, for whatever reason, not good. So imagine you're in that type of a position and then you lose your job in a very public way. When football coaches get fired, it's very public. And then imagine it being sort of it comes to light that the reason you got fired is because, you're an alcoholic and you came to work drunk. That's got to be tough to come back. That has got to be tough to keep the ship from sinking on a deal like that, and just your life just completely unwind on you. But he did it. And like we said, he's been really successful in supporting roles, and he had a really, probably like the best sort of mentorship from a coaching perspective that you'll ever find. The guy coached for Pete Carroll, and the guy coached for Nick Saban. And if you look at the last, 30 years of college football, you're not going to find too many more guys that you would say are more success. You're not going to find guys, you're not going to find a lot of coaches that you'd say they were more successful than Pete Carroll and Nick Saban. I mean, you're talking about two guys that both have been in the midst of dynasties, led dynasties, although the USC dynasty was very short-lived. It was very dominant while it was a quote-unquote dynasty, but Nick Saban has just been doing it for over a decade now. But for us, and I say me and my family, as soon as Steve Sarkisian became the head coach, we bought back into the program. We were season ticket holders from the early 2000s through the end of right around 2010, I believe, 2009, 2010, and then we just stopped. We stopped buying the season tickets for various reasons, and we never really bought back in when we could have, because the program was just fucking terrible. But immediately we bought back into the program, and by that I say we got season tickets again. So 3 coaches since Mack Brown. 2 of those times, Texas fans just completely ended up disappointed. Texas football was an absolute fucking wreck, and really just a favorite whipping boy from the entire college football world. I mean, we heard shit all the time. Texas does less with more. And that sentiment, really wasn't new to the post Mack Brown era necessarily. We heard that a lot while Mack Brown was the head coach at Texas. But it certainly took flight. I mean, it definitely took off in the 9 season between Mack Brown's last season at Texas and this year, 2023. I think it's kind of fair. 17th ranked recruiting class in 2013, 17, 10, 7, 25, 3, 3, 8, 15, 5, 3, and they currently have the 10th ranked class of 2024, and that'll certainly go up. But those are the recruiting classes from 2013 all the way forward. It's through 2023's recruiting class. And that's a 10th ranked average over those 11 classes. And all Texas has to show for it was a Sugar Bowl win. Really. I mean, that is the most impressive thing that Texas had to show for all that talent. headed into this year was a Sugar Bowl win over Georgia. 0 conference championships. That was the only New Year's Six bowl they've played in that time period. Just got completely dominated by a lot of the Big 12, including Oklahoma. So there was this huge sentiment that Texas did more with less, or less with more, rather. And then there's the whole Texas is back shit. we heard, and by the way, like this whole Texas, I feel like other college football fans have weaponized Texas is back. Like Texas fans are the ones running around saying Texas is back. I don't know any Texas fans that were running around saying we're back. What I do remember is a lot of media people saying Texas was back. And then invariably, when they weren't actually back, the college football world threw that in our faces as Texas fans. Like we were the ones running around, parading around saying, yeah, we're finally back. And just some perfect examples. Texas beats a preseason number 10 Notre Dame team in 2016. That fucking team finished 4-8 that season. But as soon as that game was over, I don't know who called that game, but Texas was back. Fast forward a couple years, Texas beats a highly ranked Georgia team that lost to Bama in the SEC championship game and just kind of missed out right there on a shot at the playoff. Texas beats them in the 2018 Sugar Bowl. Texas is back. And I'm sure I'm missing some. There was probably, I can't think of what occasion. Maybe they beat Oklahoma, in 2018. Dicker the kicker. Texas is back. The only problem was Texas was never actually back. It was just a sprinkle of some good shit amongst all the trash. And now in just 3 years, since Steve Sarkisian showed up in Austin, I think Texas has arguably one of the best football programs in the country. Just won their conference championship. They're going to the college football playoff. And I think Sark's done it the right way. So what did Sark do? How is he any different than all these other guys? Anytime somebody's successful where other people have failed, you have to ask the question, how did he do it? What did he do that was so special? What did she do that was so special? What did this group over here do that was so much different to make them successful? We'll talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think you guys have heard, everybody's heard being at the right place at the right time. But I think Texas got the right coach at the right time. And that guy just happened to be Steve Sarkisian. And I think he started off right off the bat. He knew exactly where this roster needed to be better. When Steve Sarkisian was hired in January of 2021, it hadn't been announced yet that Texas was joining the SEC. But he knew the offensive line and the defensive line on this team, the rosters, the roster players in those two position groups, not good enough. Not good enough to win championships. And then shortly thereafter, it came out that Texas was going to the SEC. And he knew definitely now we don't have the offensive linemen. We do not have the defensive linemen. We have a problem in the trenches. And not only did he realize that, he went out and executed a plan to fix that. I think number 2, he hired the right coaches. He brought the best coaches he could bring in, including 3 assistants from a Bama team that just won a national championship. Jeff Banks, Kyle Flood, AJ Milwee. These were guys that knew how to recruit, they knew how to develop, and they clearly knew how to coach. He brings in Pete Kwiatkowski as his defensive coordinator. Bo Davis, one of just the big names in college football defensive line. And a matter of fact, in professional football. That's where he was in the pros. He was in the NFL before he came back to Texas. He'd been at Texas in the like the mid 20 teens. Had a short stint at Bama. Went on to the NFL. Came back to Texas. He retained Stan Drayton and Andre Coleman off of Tom Herman's staff. Brings in Terry Joseph, Jeff Choate, Blake Gideon. All these guys, good recruiters to great recruiters and really good developers of talent. And not only did he bring those guys in, but then he's able to keep them. The continuity has been great on this coaching staff. Prior to Jeff Choate announcing that he was taking the Nevada head coaching job immediately following the Big 12 championship, right, just a couple days later this year. Only 2 coaches have moved on from this original coaching staff at the University of Texas. Stan Drayton, Andre Coleman, and all Sark did was go out and replace both those guys with home runs. Tashard Choice, man, huge recruiter. The players love him. You look at the Texas Longhorn running back room. That guy obviously knows what he's doing. Chris Jackson, wide receiver coach, an NFL guy. Look at how good the wide receivers have gotten at the University of Texas. A lot of that's recruiting the right guys, getting talent, but you got to develop it. That's happening. Number 3, Sark changed the culture at Texas. Sark wants guys that want to be at Texas. In this NIL, this transfer portal era, a lot of times there's not a lot of loyalty to the school. It's loyalty to the money. Which school can pay me the most? Which school can give me the best opportunity to go to the NFL? Sark wants guys that want to come to Texas. He wants guys that are winners. He's not just looking for guys that are individuals, not just looking for guys that have had success as individuals. He's looking for guys that have had success as individuals, but on really good teams, successful teams, championship winning teams. Go look at the roster. There's a lot of guys on that roster that have played on really, really good teams. And he continues to recruit guys that have played on really, really good winning championship teams. He recruits to that. He brings players in from the transfer portal accordingly to that. He manages players out very, very quickly that aren't bought in. When he got there, he was able to kind of hold the class together that was already in place. He brought in a couple of additions. But that was the roster he had in that recruiting class. That was the roster he was going to have. And then you fast forward after that first season in 2021, and it was a mass exodus of players. 23 players gone. As soon as the season was over, get the fuck out. Some of them might have been, I just want to move on. Most of them were, get the fuck out because you're not doing what you need to be doing. And you go back to that Bo Davis rant after the Iowa State game. I think that was kind of like the key moment for the program. It was one of the key moments for the program. If you haven't heard the Bo Davis rant, you ought to go Google it. It's pretty fucking amazing. And so he changed the culture, and it's easy to go, okay, he changed the culture, but what does that really mean? Well, what I think it means is, you look at what Steve Sarkisian says, you look at the product that he puts out onto the field. What I think it means is they're tough, they're aggressive, and they got love for each other. I think that's, if you could break down the culture, if you could define what Steve Sarkisian's trying to build when he says we got to change the culture, that's what he's trying to do. A physically tough group of kids that are ultra fucking aggressive, and they love each other, and they go out there and they play for each other. And when one guy doesn't play a lot, but his teammate does a lot and does good stuff during the game, he's happy, legitimately happy for his teammate. That's the culture. And that's as simple as it needs. That's as simple as it is. And that's that's as complicated as it needs to be. Talk about recruiting. He held that 2021 class together that was ranked 15th overall. Now he's got 2 straight top 5 recruiting classes. He's likely got a third on the way. They're sitting at 10 right now. But if all the crystal ball stuff that's been coming up actually happens, this team will absolutely be a top 5. It could even be a top 3 class. We talked earlier about Tom Herman was a really good recruiter from a stars perspective. Steve Sarkisian's not just looking at stars. He's not just looking to build a class that has a big number. He's looking to address, specific needs on the team. And his classes are ultra focused. Even after the big wave of offensive linemen in that 22 class and the big wave of defensive linemen in that 2023 class, he remains focused on bringing in elite talent on the offensive and defensive line. I've said this before, and this is definitely a Horn take. So listen up for this Horn take. You can have, if you have really outstanding offensive and defensive linemen, the skill position players almost don't matter. You could take a great player, put him on a team. Let's say he's a quarterback. Put a great quarterback on a team that has a bad offensive line and a bad defensive line, and he's not going to look as good at the quarterback position, and they're not going to win a lot of games. You can take an average guy, a guy that, maybe just physically, he's smart. He knows where to go with the football, but he can't make all the throws. He can't run around. He's kind of a statue. You put him on a team with a great offensive line and a great defensive line, they're going to win a lot of games, and he's going to look really fucking good because he's got all day to stand back there and just be able to deliver the football to somebody that can take it and run. He's done the same stuff in the transfer portal. I mean, he's had some wins, he's had some losses, but he uses that portal very well to fill immediate needs. And as time has gone on since he's been at Texas, the wins in the transfer portal starting to pile up. I think the other thing Steve Sarkisian did to turn all this around is he took his lumps like a man. Season 1 was fucking terrible. And you got the huge blown lead against OU. 6 losses in a row. No bowl eligibility. I don't think even the most realistic Texas fan would have thought that all was going to happen in year 1. I mean, I think most Texas fans thought we would at worst be what we were the year before, which is 8 or 9 wins. Season 2 was better, but it still failed to meet, I think, most Texas fans' expectations. You got to remember, folks, this is the time of the one-hit wonder. TCU, national champions last year. National championship game last year. Tennessee, top team last year, beat Alabama. Till their quarterback got hurt, they were smoking it. You look at Baylor a couple years ago, Dave Aranda took over a really shitty Baylor team. They won the Big 12 championship a couple years later. So the expectations are if you get the right coach, you can quickly win games. You can quickly, win championships and be dominant and all that crazy stuff. The truth of the matter about all that is it's all timing. And those guys that coach those teams walked into really good situations timing-wise and roster-wise. Steve Sarkisian didn't walk into that kind of situation, and he made it worse on purpose to get people out of the program that he knew weren't bought in to his culture. He tuned out all the BS, man, all that outside BS. Sark will never be an elite coach. 8-win Sark. Sark's just a drunk. He's never going to get shit done. Again, got to be hard to hear that stuff. Man, he took all that shit on the chin like a champ. Never wavered from his vision of what Texas football could be. Never wavered from his strategy to make that vision a reality. All he really did was just kind of focus on himself, focus on his staff, and focus on his players, and led that group of people to where we sit today at 12-1, conference champs, headed into the college football playoff. I think the last bit, and this doesn't have anything to do with Sark necessarily, it doesn't at all. I think the other piece, sort of the outside factor that has really helped Sark, is this imminent move to the SEC. I think we've talked about it before. That opened up a lot of doors recruiting-wise. Now Texas A&M can't go tell a bunch of Texas kids, hey, you get to play in the premier conference in college football if you come to Texas A&M. Now you can go outside of Texas and recruit kids from SEC country and say, hey, man, we're in the SEC now too. Come play with us. We're going to get to go home a lot. Long road, but here we are. Steve Sarkisian's got this thing going, and I'm here for it, man. I'm here for it, having a blast. Join us on Thursday. We'll talk about the 2024 SEC schedule for Texas. That's being released tomorrow night. We'll get you caught up on the transfer portal, and we might talk a little bit of recruiting too as National Signing Day gets closer and closer. Check out the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. Follow and subscribe won't cost you guys a thing. We sure appreciate the support. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys have a good Tuesday. We'll see you Thursday. Get hooked.